be presenting one civilization. There are museums like the Louvre or the Metropolitan Museum or the British Museum, but they show several civilizations. This museum will be showing only one civilization, the ancient Egyptian civilization, and by this being the biggest museum in size for one civilization.
How large will it be? How many?
There should be a partial opening in 2018, May 2018, and the partial opening will be a fantastic event because for the first time the complete treasures of King Tutankhamun will be displayed. Not only the 1,700 objects that are on display now, but the complete 4,500 objects that were discovered inside the tomb.
And how many square meters is the museum going to be?
The whole site is 490,000 square meters, and we will have more than 50,000 square meters of museological display. Tutankhamun alone will be 7,000 square meters. And this museum will have 100,000 objects, 50,000 objects on display, and another 50,000 in accessible storage for scientists to be able to work on, and objects from there will be used for temporary exhibitions as well.
Where are all these pieces right now?
Some of them are in the overcrowded Egyptian Museum at Tahrir. Many of them are coming from storehouses in the different archaeological sites from Egypt. From the 50,000 objects that will be on display, 30,000 objects have never been on display before.
Wow.
So the museum is really in the fortunate position to show fantastic new objects. And these objects, deliberately, we are, as we are building a new museum, we want there to be new masterpieces. So we will not rely on the masterpieces of the Tahrir Museum, but we will create new masterpieces.
Will that museum remain open, or will you eventually phase it out?
No, it will remain open, because this museum is now 113 years old. It has become an antiquity of its own. And in the collective memory of the world, the masterpieces there have been connected now to this place. And it is one of the oldest museums that was actually built to be a museum. The big museums abroad, most of them were castles, and then they were transformed into museums. But this is one of the first buildings to be built as a museum of its own.
But every single piece of King Tut that's there right now will be transported here. Will that
Yes.
be a problem as to preserving it in the transport?
It is challenging, but we have already safely transported 2,600 objects of King Tut, over 2,000 from the Egyptian Museum at Tahrir, and another 600 from Luxor, where they were in the storehouses of the Luxor Museum. And we have very capable transportation staff who do a fantastic packing of the objects, and then they are carefully transported to the Grand Egyptian Museum.
How much is your budget for the construction of this new museum? And you said it will open in 2018. Do you have a month in 2018? that
May.
May? And how much will be the cost, and when will the entire museum be open?
Well, the cost will exceed $1 billion US. And
Sorry, and the government is so just paid or everybody?
No, the government has just committed $300 million US to the project. There was already a loan from Japan of another $300 million US, and we are working now on getting loans and grants for the remaining amount of money.
UNESCO?
Actually, the UNESCO is not a funding body, so you cannot get big amounts of money from the UNESCO.
Is it possible the private investment here?
It is possible to finance certain aspects in the museum.
For example?
For example, we have big gardens, we have event areas. These can be sponsored. Also, in the galleries, certain installations inside the museum could be sponsored, and then there could be an acknowledgement for the sponsorship. So these are possibilities of sponsorship. But mainly, Egypt is shouldering this fantastic project on its own, because even the loans will be eventually repaid by the Egyptian government. So Egypt is building here, only 2 kilometers away from the pyramids of Giza, the museum of the 21st century. It is a fantastic architectural concept as well, rather complicated and sophisticated. So we expect that maybe 30% of the visitors in the first year will not be coming only for the objects, but they will be coming to really enjoy this new landmark that is being created here beside the pyramids of Giza.
And when did you say the total project will be finished, the whole museum? You said
well, as I said, 2018, this will be the so-called grand staircase. This will be there will be a monumental entrance with a 14-meter high statue of King Ramses II. He will be welcoming the visitors, and then you will ascend a fantastic staircase, passing by monumental statues and architectural elements from ancient Egyptian temples, and you reach at the end a 28-meter high glass facade overlooking the 3 pyramids of Giza. By that, the pyramids become a star inside the museum, and there, when you turn right, you enter the 2 big galleries of King Tutankhamun, and this will be the partial opening. Within, I estimate, 4 additional years, so by the year 2022, the complete opening should then happen, and this will add another 35,000 square meters to the partial opening, and this will be the chronological part of the museum. Chronological galleries starting from prehistory until the Greco-Roman period. So over a period, or covering a period of over 5,000 years, it will be explaining the identity of this museum, which is kingship and eternity.
Kingship and that will be the theme.
That will be the main identity of the museum, and we are aiming to show this by showing the relation between the people of Egypt and their king and their conception of kingship, because this played a major role in creating the objects that the visitor will be seeing and enjoying. So we are also trying to explain a lot behind the objects, a lot of religious background of the ancient Egyptians, of historical background, of social, political background, so as to understand ancient Egyptian culture in a much broader sense than most of the Egyptian collections, even abroad, which mainly are object focused. So here we will more be thematically focused.
How much will be the tickets?
It will be in the range of comparable international museums. So, like for instance, the Louvre. So it will be in the range of $15 US.
Mm-hmm.
How can you imagine the opening in 2 years?
I can
Big party.
not imagine it, because it will be something that has never happened before, and we are hoping to make it something really commemorable in a way that anybody who will miss this event will feel that he has missed an essential event in his life.
Let's hope that we're not going to miss it.
What is your opinion about the influence of this museum in the world? Because it's the first investment with that amount in the world in this century.
I think Egypt is here really becoming a trendsetter, showing that at a time where there is again unrest in several parts of the world, and antiquities are endangered, and even in some cases deliberately destroyed. So it is still important to build really safe havens for the treasures of humankind heritage, and of course ancient Egyptian antiquities are an important part of humankind heritage. So this museum will be a bunker to protect the antiquities of Egypt, and to show them in an informative and enjoyable way for the Egyptian public and for our foreign guests.
How about the other museum? It's not going to be closed, but do you think that the people are going to come here and stop going over there, or both?
I think both museums will have their
Like
visitors,
clientele.
their clientele.
Yeah.
Of course, this museum will, especially with Tutankhamun, be a focal point, and will be changing the typical touristic route to Egypt. So you will have a new touristic day, which will most probably be the pyramids and the Grand Egyptian Museum. I have proposed that the Museum at Tahrir should then have different opening hours, which means that it should open from 5 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 o'clock in the evening, so that at the time where other museums have closed, this will be a fantastic option for people to enjoy the masterpieces of ancient Egyptian sculpture and art at the museum in Tahrir, beside the now also historic Tahrir Square. So I think that both museums will be surviving well beside each other, and will both have their big numbers of visitors.
You mentioned that only about half the pieces will be on display. Will you have policies of loaning some of the other pieces to museums in other parts of the world?
Of course, like any big museum in the world, the Grand Egyptian Museum aims to become a global player, which means that they will be collaborations with other museums to have exhibitions abroad, and also to get pieces from abroad to Egypt. The Grand Egyptian Museum for the first time will have two big areas for temporary exhibitions, and I'm hoping that we will start something that will be new to Egypt. Normally we were mainly exporting objects abroad in exhibitions, but now I would like to also import exhibitions. Exactly. To show also cultures that are not so common to the Egyptian community. So, for instance, in the future, it will be also interesting to have exhibitions from the southern
like
part
Mexico.
of America, Mexico, Latin America. These are places which are connected in the minds of the Egyptians with certain romantic and historical and political aspects, but they have rarely had the possibility to get in direct contact.
But you did have an exchange once with Mexico with the ISIS and the feathered soup and exhibit. I'm sure you know about that.
Yes, yes. There have been some little attempts, but I think we would like to make it now on a grander scale, because at a time where the world is again sadly drifting apart, culture and our common roots and our common heritage should be again something that gets people from all around the world closer. So the Grand Egyptian Museum or I hope, will become two main things. So on one hand, I would like it to be a meeting point for cultures, so that the visitors who come here mingle and get in a dialogue with the Egyptians and with each other, and at the same time, as this museum will have a big landscape around it, and as part of it, I would like it also to become a hot social meeting point for the Egyptians themselves, also for cultural exchange with the Grand Egyptian Museum in the heart of it.
Sorry, if it's possible, can you show us the final project of this museum?
Aquí.
The maquette, yeah.
I will take you to a maquette, and before I will also show you now two of our labs, because the first thing that was opened from the Grand Egyptian Museum was the Conservation Center. This was opened in 2010. Since then, we have transported already from the 100,000 pieces, 27,500 pieces have already reached us here. Over 14,000 objects have already been treated, restored, and made ready for display. So we will take you now to see two of our 17 state-of-the-art restoration labs, which include also some of the objects of Tutankhamun that have never been on display before. And at the current moment, this restoration center is the biggest restoration center in the world.
How many people there?
Right now we have 100 restorators and restorators working in it. And we are working hard for it not only to be the biggest, but to be one of the leading and best.